Okay. Okay. Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. So today, as we head in towards the end of Pride Month, honestly the end of Pride Month is kind of like when Christmas is coming to an end. June is like one of my favorite months. Part of it is because of Pride Month. Pride Month is Christmas, and once it comes to an end, it's like Christmas over, which is very sad. But the event doesn't end, because before we end it, I want to talk about, so let's talk about the complicated history with LGBTQ plus representation in the Disney media, like the Disney in general. We're going to talk about the history of it, but you know, I'm going to focus on like the media, like the TV shows and films, specifically a little bit behind the scenes, but I'm not going to talk too much about the politician, like the drama and stuff, because that's like a different video for another day, and also it's very complex. We're just gonna focus on like the history with how Disney represented their LGBTQ plus community, and boy, it's such a complicated history, so I'm gonna break it down all for you. Again, if you like any more Disney content in my channel, please make sure you subscribe and like. I have tons of videos, Disney videos about in my channel, so subscribe and like, and gay rights. Anyway, and if there's anything that I missed, which most likely will happen, please make sure you leave in the comments down below. And I'm sorry, once again, I missed something. Just, again, this is such like a long ass history buff. Like, I did a little bit of research, but I also do it through memory, you know, mixed between both, like what I remember and also, you know, showing you guys like some representation of like the history with how Disney represents LGBTQ plus community. You know, it's gonna be such a huge video, so let's get right into it. I'm looking at my notes and stuff. I just too, before we start, I just want to say that we're going to be focusing more on Disney and Pixar specifically, including live action a little bit, not so much with like Star Wars and Marvel, because I feel like that's a different topic for another, and this will make this video a lot more longer, as it probably will already be. We have so much things to say with the history, but we're going to focus more on the animation part and like Disney in general and Pixar, just giving you guys a heads up. Let me just change this battery and let's talk about herstory. Anyway, okay, so let's get right into it. So hold on, let me just adjust the camera. Okay, so as you guys know, Disney has tons of LGBTQ plus, not tons, but like they do have LGBTQ plus characters in their IP. However, majority of them are very hidden. It's more like if you're part of the community, you can easily identify if somebody tells you like, hey, they're part of the community, but once you watch the movie, it's not really there. It's just like very hidden. It's like queer coded as another. And again, if you catch it, most of them are based on like LGBTQ plus stereotype. So that's like another problem, especially with their early works of how they portrayed the community in their early films, especially. Again, like I think the most common Disney like franchise in general that people usually identify it being part of the LGBTQ plus community is the Disney villains, because based on like how campy they are with their outfits especially, and also like their personality is very like over the top, like lavish, similar to how you would see like a drag queen. If you watch like RuPaul's Drag Race or just any like drag queens in general, people usually associate Disney villains as part of like the LGBTQ plus community. And again, part of it, one of them is started it all. And to start this history journey, let's go back into the 90s, which was late 80s, which was the start of the Disney Renaissance, where the Disney Renaissance era, this is where all the gay stuff happened, because around the late 80s and early 90s, the AIDS crisis was such like a big thing in the media. Like it was a big concern, especially in the community. And this area, again, the Renaissance era has so many LGBTQ plus hidden characters or like hidden elements in this movie. And a big one is because it's not this person's fault, but he is part of the movement. We're going to talk about Howard Ashman. If you don't know who he is, Howard Ashman is the producer slash, he's known for like composer of like The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Beauty and the Beast. Unfortunately, he passed away in the early 90s, like 1991, I'm pretty sure, due to AIDS. And he is part of the community, the LGBTQ plus community, and he's very well known in like the Broadway world. And it's just very unfortunate how he did saw Little Mermaid, but he wasn't able to see the full finished touch of Beauty and the Beast. But he did work on those movies during his time. More, especially a lot more in Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast. Not so much with Aladdin, a little bit with Aladdin, but like mostly those two movies specifically. And so he is like part of what, you know, part of the magic of those three movies specifically, especially those two. And again, let's talk about The Little Mermaid. The one started the Renaissance in general, has tons of LGBTQ plus representation. A big one is the villain Ursula. As you can see, you know, Ursula was inspired from a drag queen, the late Divine Rose. I forgot her name, but I know it's Divine, like a drag queen inspired by Ursula. So Ursula was inspired from like a drag queen, especially her like makeup persona. And also like Howard Ashman's also intensely really involved with this project. Not only he's a composer of the movie, does the music, but he's also like the producer of the movie. Like he's kind of part of the storyline. So like, yes, again, some people in the community argue that some of the Little Mermaid story does show some like LGBTQ plus, especially like Ariel's journey, like her struggles with like how different she is from everybody else, which how like most people from the community feels that way, feel like an outcast, feel like they're different, they're meant to do something else, similar to like Beauty and the Beast as well, with the Beast journey, like how he's just different from everybody else. So that's a big representation of the LGBT in the Little Mermaid era. And then with Aladdin and Beauty and the Beast, they're very much like similar. The part of similarity is that they do include like two cross-dressing moments. The big one is in Beauty and the Beast towards like the third act, when the Gaston's mom went into the castle. There's a scene where like one of the moms was cross-dressing. That's like a little like blink it to you, this is a little like funny moment in the story, in the movie. And then with similar to Aladdin, during like Prince Ali, you can see the genie dressing up as one of like the belly dancers, like wearing like a dress, and it's like cross-dressing a little bit. So there's some like cross-dressing elements, and they did replicate that in the live action moment with like similar two stories. And what's similar about the live action that was more talked upon versus when the movie came out was Beauty and the Beast with LeFou's sexuality. Like I didn't notice about it until the live action movie, where like LeFou was labeled as like the first like villain psychic LGBT, because he's has a heavily crush on Gaston, and he's part of like another representation of like the LGBT. I remember it was such like a big talk, especially when the live action came out. So he's part of the community more in the live action, not so much with the animation, but you can kind of see elements of that. I think it's the same thing with Aladdin, when we saw like Will Smith like cross-dressing during like the Prince Ali moment. So those two movies have that cross-dressing element, and also the LeFou character sexuality. So that's Beauty and the Beast. And again, I want to include the Lion King. There was no like, but the only big thing about the Lion King is the music, and who's behind the music is Elton John, which he is heavily part of the community, the LGBT community, and he did work on the soundtrack, like which made the movie the highest grossing film of all time in the Disney animation world. Still lives to this day, I think. I think Frozen beat it, but like it's one of the highest grossing animation movies. The Lion King, so like a gay guy was part of the music process, similar to like Howard Ashman, so I want to include him in this. And then to end off the era, a little movie that basically started this LGBT talk was Mulan. Yes, Mulan is like a gay movie, an LGBT. I feel like Mulan is definitely Disney's like first like LGBT coded movie. Part of it's because of Mulan's like identity. Comes back to like, again, cross-dressing, which is part of the storyline where she like dressed up as a man, and similar to like what transgender people go through. I'm not saying like that's what they go through, it just has like that cross-dressing element. Once again, it's also part of the storyline. And then the argument with like Le Shang, like Mulan's like love interest slash the leader, being like bisexual potentially, because he was very into Pink when Mulan dressed up as a man, and really into Mulan as a woman. So like people argue that he is potentially bisexual, to add to that conversation. And then same thing with Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. Towards the third act, you see some cross-dressing moments happening when Mulan and her army dressing up like wearing like those Chinese traditional dress before they defeat the villain. Especially that palace scene. You know what I'm talking about, when they played I'll Make a Man Out of You for the second time with not instrumental, but with the music. And then also a big one that makes Mulan resonate so much with the LGBTQ plus community is like the identity, like being happy with who yourself, because Mulan focused so much on identity crisis, like figuring out like who you are, especially with the song Reflection. So Mulan focused on reflection, which is like an also part of the it's like very LGBT coded as well. So Mulan is like the start it's like very LGBT coded, I should say. So that is like the start of like Disney LGBT era in the Renaissance era. So now we're moving on to the early 2000s era. The only thing I can find around that era that's big in the community is the Disney Channel. So we're gonna go into the Disney Channel route. It's gonna go back and forth with like early 2010s and early 2000s. So let's talk about Kenny Ortega. Kenny Ortega is basically like Howard Ashman in the Disney Channel history. If you didn't know, yes, he is part of the community. He's part of the LGBTQ plus community. He directed this little famous trilogy called High School Musical, the movie. In case you didn't know, High School Musical does have an LGBT character, one of the leads, which is Ryan Sharpay's twin brother. I did talk about the facts about High School Musical in a different video about that. But yes, Ryan, the character, is part of, comes back again with those like hidden LGBT. You don't really see it until you're part of the community to recognize those little hints. And they did finally confirmed it in the spin-off High School Musical, the musical series, that Ryan is gay. He's like dating somebody, finding out like where they are at the moment. So he is part of the community. You can also see that with how Ryan dressed with the first dream, and like how he dressed up very stereotypically, you know, in the Disney Channel. And part of another Kenny Ortega franchise he worked on was the Descendants franchise, like a few years after High School Musical. We'll talk about Descendants right now. So in case you didn't know, before like when the sequel came out, like Descendants 2, there was like a picture of like Harry, Hook, and Gil kissing after the third act when Oleana was about to break the barrier or something like that. And there was a scene of like Harry, Hook, and Gil like kissing. No word if that was filmed or it was just the actors like making fun of it. So I just want to add that part of representation, because like some people argue that like Mal, even Dove Cameron mentioned like how Mal, I think Mal is like pansexual, and some people...
Mal was just pan from the very beginning. Mal's a pixie. Mal has magical powers. Like, for sure she was also madly in love with Evie.
But also space between, it's so gay. That's a love song for Evie and Mal, for sure, I'm confirming it.
View Mal and Evie's are more than a relationship, especially how you see them, how they interact with each other, especially during like space between, like they're very like who becomes super touchy nose to nose with somebody when they're in an emotional moment, unless they're like some secret lovers. That's what some people view that type of, more than like a friendship, more like something is there. But yeah, Dove Cameron did confirm that she thinks that Mal is pansexual, you know. And then now moving on to the new Pocket Watch franchise, like the Rise of Red, people are shipping. People think that Chloe and Red Glassheart as a couple. They really believe that, especially Chloe. Chloe was supposed to be like into girls, especially if you see that lead demo of Life is Sweetener when you see Rapunzel's daughter singing the song. You can tell like she was really like, there's a line that Chloe's like really like into Rapunzel's, that like where like, oh, I like you, and you know, you can see she's a little bit like flirty and stuff with her. So it's a little bit like a cut representation, but people still believe that she could still be part of the community. But so that's a little bit of LGBT spotlight in the Descendants franchise. And then since we're still in the Disney Channel, let's talk about some Disney history. Of course, Raven Simone is part of the community. She made such a huge impact in the channel. So many, I feel like half of the Disney Channel stars are like part of the community, as they revealed later on. So Annie Mac famously was one of the first Disney Channel show to showcase a gay character and also in a coming out scene, and he was also Jewish, so I'm not really sure his name, but Annie Mac was like one of the first, I'm pretty sure, Disney Channel like gay show. And then also Good Luck Charlie infamously has an episode where they featured two moms that the kid Amy was babysitting. If you remember the episode, they mentioned they're married, two moms. And also a little animated series, The Owl House, has an LGBT lead as well. And also recently the Proud Family, the spin-off sequel, Proud, Louder and Prouder, does have a few LGBT characters. Part of it is part of Penny Proud's family, like I forgot his name, but the guy, he's also LGBT. And then Kiki Palmer's character also has two dads. So that show is very much part of the LGBT community. So you can see how Disney Channel is kind of like growing out of it. I think Proud Families are one of the great representation of LGBT, making it more normalized. They're just there, you know? That's part of it. So now we're moving on to 2010s, known as First Gays. And also we're going to talk about modern princesses as well. So the 2010s is where Disney is known for doing, they always mention in the article, like, this is the first gay character in a Pixar movie. And the biggest one that does it is Pixar. So let's talk about Pixar. The one that started it all is, of course, Ellen did voice Dory in the 2003 Finding Nemo. In her sequel, Finding Dory, I remember it's a blink it till you miss it moment. You see a bunch of that in the late 2010s Pixar movie. It's how there was a lesbian couple in the aquarium in Finding Dory. I remember that was such a big talk in town when Finding Dory came out. And also Lightyear, infamously, one of the characters is part of the community, the voice that Keke Palmer played. I remember Keke Palmer's character, or her, has a mom too. I remember like that 5-second scene was cut from some countries that are really against LGBT. So I hope Pixar has been doing this a lot. And here's another one. I remember Onward did have their first LGBT characters. I remember it's one of the guards is part of the community, LGBT as well. It's a small role. It's like, it's not really memorable, but it's like a small little role. And I want to put Brave because of Merida's personality. Because I feel like she's a little bit more like dumb boy. Not a very typical Disney person. She's like very similar to Raya and Mulan. We did talk about Mulan, but I want to add her there because she could possibly be like a lesbian, or like she's just very like masculine, you know, very tomboy like aesthetic. And also apparently in Elemental, they have a character named Lake Rippy who is Disney's first non-binary character, which is cool. I forgot about that character. It's been a while since I watched Elemental. And so that's a little bit of like a rough history with Pixar with LGBT. I think Pixar is the most LGBT like driven studio that creates lots of the headlines with Disney's first whatever. So now let's talking about Frozen. The Frozen case, I call it, is that people to this day still argue that Elsa is a lesbian. Elsa, I don't see Elsa dating a man. I see her seeing a girl, especially with people's strong theories about it. A big one is Elsa's little song called Let It Go, which is a very much, people view that song like a coming out song, like feeling free of letting go and telling people who they are. And Elsa also discovering who she is, like herself is also part of the LGBT hidden character type of moment, feeling like she's also different. So she has so many like LGBT hidden cues in her character and her storyline too. I remember she was trending on Twitter before the sequel came out. People really want, fans are campaigning Elsa to have a girlfriend. I remember they said Elsa should have a girlfriend. I remember that was trending in Twitter in the late 2010s before Frozen 2 came up. I remember people really want Elsa. So hopefully Frozen 3, they finally give her a girlfriend because people really want her to have a girlfriend. That's still like a big hope and stuff. So that's like a little bit Frozen with Elsa being part of the community representation. And then Moana, well, the character herself, she's not, she could still be, she's similar like quality as like Merida, Raya, and Mulan, like very athletic. However, in case you didn't know, the voice actress that voiced Moana is part of the community. I think she never said was bisexual. I remember like how when she promoted Moana 2, people were very sad and made fun of like how Disney brought her back to the closet because she had like her extension, because at that time she had like short hair, like it shows like very like queer coded, like queer look style, but once they put the long hair extension, it just shows that she's back to the closet, making it look like she's just an ordinary girl where like not really short curls. But I know, so the voice actor playing Moana is part of the community, which is really great. And then a little Disney princess movie that's forgotten is Raya. Even Kelly Moraine, so Raya being like the first hidden lesbian romance type of story, especially when you see the way Nomari and Raya interact with each other, like love and hate. They kind of fight like how couples would fight. They have like a romantic history together, especially the way they flirt with each other. It's like lovers fighting with each other. And even Kelly Moraine trying to voice Raya even believes that Raya could also be a lesbian as well. But the film didn't showcase her being a lesbian. There's like hints of her potentially being a lesbian, especially how she ends up with Nomari. Lesbian or bi, you know, but like that's what the voice actress believes Raya. And then now we're moving on to Disney's latest LGBTQ plus role, which is Strange World. Strange was such like an underrated, underperforming movie, and having Strange World being introduced like their first LGBTQ plus lead, the son. And the problem is just like how people forgot about that movie because of how it's very underperformed and it's very like hidden with the Disney catalog, similar to like Wish, which is also voiced by Ariana DeBose, who is also part of the community, like a lesbian. I think she's a lesbian or bi, I'm not really sure. I know she's part of the community, and her character is not identified as part of it, but I know she was voiced by a queer woman herself. And then a little movie from Pixar, back to Pixar again, called Luca. People argue that Luca's like similar to Raya, like how Luca is very similar to Raya, but like how the leads have like more than a friendship type of relationship. And then also I want to add Elio, like Pixar's last year's movie, was supposed to be LGBTQ plus community coded, but like the character's actually gay, but they kind of like changed the whole story. And so that's a whole like different topic for another day. But like I wanted to add like Elio was also supposed to be LGBT coded, the original pitch, like similar, but Luca's very like LGBT queer character coded. Like they've been doing it, as you see, like for the past decade. So I hope we stop that. I hope we move forward from it. I think recently we've been going like in and out. We're moving forward and we're going back, moving in, going forward. I hope that we kind of stop moving backward instead of moving forward. Again, we're slowly kind of there, but we'll see. Hopefully we won't be back in the closet yet again. So yeah, what are your thoughts about Disney's representation of LGBT? How do you feel about this character? Is there any other characters that I'm missing in this list? Probably yeah, there's like so many Disney IP, but those were like the big ones I was able to find. So yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this entire thing? I forgot to ask, Jungle Cruise also has a very controversial LGBT character where like it was played by a straight actor, but his character is gay, so I'm gonna add that too as well in the late 2000s. Similar situation with, as you can see, with the most common problem with all the LGBT representatives. So yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video. Once again, happy Pride Month. Okay, bye! Bye! Poof. I did it. That actually Mulan and Pocahontas are also part of this 8 lineup. It's just that at that time they were excluding because they weren't really princessy enough, even though like they are. Sometimes Mulan is included, as you can see with this promotional art. Oh, wait, that's it? Okay.